I have a few friends that consider themselves kind of loners. You know, the type people who really like to keep to themselves a little bit, would much prefer a night of solitude than a social engagement. One of my friends has a sweatshirt she likes to wear that says, "My favorite plans are canceled plans." Sometimes in the winter, we might all be able to relate to that feeling. But the pandemic taught us something. It taught us that even if it sounded like a nice idea to have a couple of weeks of just quiet in our homes, when it started stretching on and on and on, we learned for sure that humans are not made for isolation. It started to feel really unnatural to be so separated from other people. That's a bit of a revelation for a lot of us. Kind of like when you realize that no matter how much you enjoy relaxing, no matter how much you would really like your life to be one long Netflix binge with Cheetos there in unlimited supply, you realize that that's actually not what your body wants. That's not how we were made. We need to move. As a lot of doctors will say, motion is lotion. That's what makes you feel good, having a healthy amount of activity and exercise in your life. So this is what the prophet Isaiah is telling us in the first reading. We were designed by a maker who wants us to be connected to each other. We weren't designed for isolation. We were designed for connection. So if you ever find yourself in a gloomy place, Isaiah says the best way to overcome it is to reach out to someone else. And if you want to make that as fast as possible, as profound a shift as you can, start with people who are really struggling. Start with the homeless. Start with people who are hungry or lonely. What we'll find, Isaiah says, is that if you feed them, help them, clothe them, shelter them, you'll feel this light dawning in your life. Just like your body needs to move and will atrophy if you just lay there, your spirit needs connection, especially with those who are in need. A lot of you probably know that we have a parish visitation team here. It's a group of people that go to hospitals and nursing homes and the homes of people who are homebound and bring them communion and visit with them. And it's probably, of all the kinds of ministry you could do, it's the most basic, it's the simplest, but it's one of the most important. Recently, one of our volunteers was at the Pines, and the activities director said, "I really want you to pay special attention to this guy on the list. I'll call him Bob." She said, "He is so isolated, and we're really worried about him. He won't even talk to his roommate." So she went in to his room, and he was laying in bed, and she said hello, and he kind of just grunted a little. And then he saw her name tag and recognized her last name. And he said, "Do you happen to know so-and-so?" And she said, "Yeah, that's my cousin." And he said, "Well, I went to St. Mary's Academy with her." And she said, "Oh, yeah, no, I know she went there. I was the class of," and it was several decades later. "But I remember, yeah, she was the class of 59. And he said, "I'm the class of 59. And she said, "Oh, that's wonderful." Well, they talked about some reminiscings and some families that are well known in town. And the activities director called her and said, "What happened with Bob?" And she said, "What do you mean?" She said, "He's like a new person. He's talking with his roommate. He's sitting up. Can you come back and do that again, whatever you did?" So she had an idea, and she stopped by our rectory office, having heard that we have an archive of yearbooks, and she talked with Kim, one of our reception volunteers at the front desk and said, "Could I get a 1959 yearbook to borrow?" And we didn't have a 59, but we had a 58. So she took that over to him, and he devoured it, looking at every page, all the faces, all the names, and just loved the experience. The next time she went, Bob wasn't in his room. He was on the sun porch, sunning himself. The nurses said, "He now sits out here during the day and chats with us. He greets people when they get off the elevator." So then the volunteer thought, maybe I can reach out to some members of the class of 1959 and have them send him get well cards. So Bob started getting mail from other St. Mary's grads. And he had them all over his room, plastered on the walls. But the big day was the day she had the idea to invite a guest to come. And in walked Jim Kane. That's right, for those of you of his era, Killer Kane, the football star from the class of 58. Can you imagine Bob seeing the football star of the class above him walk into his room and they had a visit? It changed everything for Bob. A couple of weeks ago, I got a call to come over to the Pines, and what I discovered was it was for Bob. He was dying. He was at the end of his journey, and I went into his room and he was unconscious, but I told him that everyone at St. Mary's was so proud of him and that he made a big impact on the lives of the people that he went to school with and went to this parish with, and that we were praying for him and that we wanted him to save a place for us at the great big banquet he was going to. And I found out that he died the next day. And he died a happy man. And he was not on the course to die a happy man just a few months earlier. He was destined to die a sad and lonely man, an isolated man. But it was that volunteer shining a little light in his direction that changed that for him. The story I'm telling you, when you first hear it, you might call it a miracle. But if you think about it, it's not. That doesn't qualify as a miracle. That's not supernatural. That's natural. That's how we're designed. That didn't involve a bunch of angels coming in. That involved a human being shining her light in the direction of someone who was sitting in dimness. That's not something that requires supernatural help from God. Those are God's directives, God's marching orders for us. Jesus says in the gospel, you are the light of the world. You got to shine. You've got to shine your light. And you've got to direct that light toward others. A lot of us have thought about shining our light over the years. Maybe we've heard this gospel and we love the song, This Little Light of Mine. But what we're hearing in this gospel is very specific. We may be lamps that God has made, but we're a special kind of lamp. We're a gooseneck lamp that shines its light out. We're the kind of lamp that doesn't shine on itself. We're the kind of lamp that has a bulb that's directed in a certain direction. We are called to shine in the direction of those who need the light most. And we need others to shine on us because gooseneck lamps can't shine on themselves, though they always benefit from the brightness that comes from being lit up. In order for us to do this, we have to start getting in the habit of listening to the generous impulses God gives us and then obeying them. We got to listen and obey to those generous impulses. And you know how that is. When you get a little push, a little stirring that says, go visit that person. Pick up that phone and call that person. Send a note to this person. Spend some time with her today. Normally you run right by her. Today's the day to spend a little bit of time. The people at the Pines did not know that Bob was on his final approach. They assumed he was going to be there a while. But there was no time. All of the good that volunteer wanted to do, she had to do urgently. Pope Francis says something really brilliant about this. He says, good deeds are not like leftovers from a restaurant. They don't keep. They don't keep well in the fridge. You gotta do it now. He said, the phrase, I'll do it tomorrow, is one of the biggest stumbling blocks for a Christian. Because if you get an impulse, it's for right now. It's urgent. They don't keep well in the fridge, he said. So this week, we're being encouraged to consider, how does my light shine? Where is my light bulb pointed these days? Who is my Bob? Who's the person that I have been assigned to shine light toward? When's the last time I can remember receiving an impulse from God to be generous or present, and I listened? And when's the last time I received one of those impulses and I didn't listen? What did that feel like? Jesus said, one of the best reasons to do this is to make God look good. We're like God's PR team. That's what Jesus says. He says, if you do this, people will see your good deeds and they'll glorify your Heavenly Father. Your job is to make God look good, which is what Deacon Dave says at the end of every Mass. He always says, go in peace, glorifying the Lord by your life. Go make God look good. And the way we do that is by shining the light that we have to shine. Where is your light bulb pointing these days?